Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Genomics Lite. My name is Sam.
And I'm Jack. We are both in the Wellcome Connecting Science team on the Wellcome Genome Campus. If you haven't joined us for one of these Genomics Lights before, then welcome. These are a series of short summer sessions that share the science that happens on our campus, which is all about DNA codes.
And this is our third summer session exploring, key questions that we get from people like you. And the series is streaming live on YouTube. So welcome if you are watching us right now on the YouTube live stream. And each of the videos will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel. So after you finish watching this one, go and take a look at some of the other episodes that we've got up. We've got ones on who was the first to have their genome sequenced. What was the longest, longest genome that's been sequenced, and what we're going to have an episode after this one, which is on ancient DNA.
But this session is all about AI. We're going to be exploring what it is and how it's used on our campus with three fabulous guests. We'll introduce them shortly, but first off, let's get some background. So, Sam, big question. What is AI?
Okay, yeah. So this is a big question, and it might be worth saying that we won't be able to spend the whole of this 45 minutes that we've got speaking about everything to do with AI. But what we'll try and do is go through some of the basics. So first of all, AI stands for artificial intelligence. And a good definition to sort of work from or work with during this session is that it's essentially something that we get machines to do that ordinarily would require human brain power. So that could be, lots of different activities from solving, problems, maybe even moving around the physical world, learning from mistakes, finding patterns, and also potentially communicating with other intelligent beings. And we'll get on to, communication in a second. We can see those words in there that says artificial and intelligence. That can start to open, philosophical, ideas of what we mean by both of those words. But generally, in this talk, we're just going to really think about machines that are doing some really, really smart, clever things.
So, when I hear artificial intelligence, maybe because I've been watching too many films, the first place my mind goes to is killer robots. Are we going to be talking about killer robots on this episode today?
We are not talking about killer robots. We're not going to be talking about anything to do with sort of emotionally sentient computers or anything like that. So it's worth saying that that isn't in the world today. That isn't a possibility. There is research into some of this stuff, but it doesn't exist. And so we're not talking about that. That isn't something that happens on our site at all.
So we're not going to be talking about killer robots. We're not going to be talking about that extreme edge of artificial intelligence. We're going to be talking about something before then. What what does that mean for DNA science? Why are we on the Genome Campus doing an episode on AI?
Okay, so if you've joined us over the past two episodes or watched our previous ones, or whether or not you're new, let's just get back to the basics. So DNA is a really long code of essentially instructions that tells living things how to be and what to do, and tells their organisms, their cells in their bodies basically what to do. We are trying to basically understand those codes. So as you can imagine, we get lots and lots and lots of data, and we need computers to navigate that data. But as technology has improved, as computers have improved, as you can imagine, we are getting through even more amounts of this data. The pace that we are able to read this DNA code is so rapid. So we need both, just powerful computers, but also really clever infrastructure to be able to help us to, navigate through these really big data sets, these big genomes, this big DNA code. And this is where AI can really come in and play a part. But it's also worth saying that, and maybe some of you watching, the things that you're interacting with AI in a, say, day-to-day basis, there's lots of things that we can do in terms of work processes that mean that we can use AI to make things more efficient. So, we're often communicating across lots of teams on our site. So is there ways that, AI can support us in, some of those day-to-day tasks? So we'll be talking a little bit about where some of the both nuances really of AI in today's session.
Great. So those nuances, navigating big data and helping with the kind of day-to-day human things. How can we get computers to help us do our human stuff? Um, AI feels like quite a buzzword at the moment. I don't know how many people have logged into this going, oh, I feel like AI is something I need to learn about because it's the new big thing. But it's got a history, hasn't it? Where's AI come from?
Yeah, so as you said, very much in the sort of conversations in modern world today, it's quite hard to read anything without the word AI popping up somewhere. So, but as an academic sort of exploration of this idea, that's sort of 70 years old now. So it really started in the 1950s as computers were starting to grow and develop and become more advanced. But some of the core concept, which are sort of based in almost fundamental mathematics, are even older than that. So there's this word that we'll probably touch upon today, which is called, or delve into a bit more of the modern aspect of it, but it's called machine learning. And essentially that describes algorithms, or basically using machines to learn and find patterns in data sets that you sort of give them. And some of the mathematics that gets used is sometimes is based on early statistical methods that are from the 1800s. So quite simple old mathematics that's being used and advanced as we go into the modern age. If we were to take an example in, as you said, we're a DNA biological research campus. A sort of understanding of this word machine learning would be if we took, say, cancer identification of, say, cancer tumors as an example. So you could train a computer essentially to spot tumors by showing it lots and lots of photos and basically train it to learn where those patterns emerge to help with that identification of, say, cancer tumors. So that would be like an example essentially of this word machine learning.
Mhm. And what does that mean for us in the modern day? What is it that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so as I tried to allude to earlier, the modern world has meant that we've got faster computers, a lot more larger data sets. So that machine learning, the subset of that in the modern age, is kind of called deep learning, and hopefully we'll go into that a little bit as well, but not directly. But it basically uses as I say, slightly more advanced statistical tools. And there's this word that, again, we won't dive too deep in, but it's called neural networks. And as that word starts to uh, insinuate, that is essentially almost creating computer systems that mimic almost our human brain structure. So, computer systems that are passing data from each sort of data set down the line to basically to solve big problems. But the term that you probably will hear quite a lot today is this word called large language models. We might also refer to it as LLMs or LLMs if we do it really quickly, which we might do when we get into it. So these are basically massive machine learning algorithms that use humongous data sets for basically help computers to learn a little bit like what you and I, Jack, are doing right now. So that compute sort of learning, helping computers to learn almost like how we would communicate with one another, to basically help support that interface with some human to computer interaction tasks essentially. And that's where more modern things like chatbots are being used. And this term, or this large language model that people might have heard about in the world today, chat GPT, that's a type of large language model essentially. And what I was quickly going to do was just share an image that hopefully explains the vastness of this world of AI. So if I just quickly share this image for you. This is a really nice image that kind of encompasses that big world of AI, where within that you've got things like machine learning. Within machine learning, you've got things like deep learning. Within that, this word generative AI, and then even further in, things like large language models like Chat GPT. So hopefully that starts to give you an idea of the sparseness of this huge world.
And I suppose to say what we'll be doing in this session is picking out a couple of pixels on that diagram of going, here's an example of something on our campus. At least one of them will be within that large language model space. All of them, I think, will be within that deep learning space, but we'll be picking out 3 or more different examples of spaces that it's used. But that feels like a really good point for me to introduce our first guest. So you've listened to Sam and I very non-expertly talk about AI. I want to bring in Priyanka now, who's one of our senior scientific managers on our site and can speak with a little more authority than we can about AI. Priyanka leads our BioDev network. Well, I suppose what I might do is just, Priyanka, tell us what does that mean? What is the BioDev network?
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Priyanka Sarana, and lovely to be here with all of you. The BioDev Network, it's a community space. Because we're always doing science at the cutting edge, there's no courses or maps to guide us through it. And so this is a group of practitioners who are doing research in AI, for example, who come together regularly and talk about their struggles and help each other with best practices, but we also listen from world experts on what's going on. So yes, it's a community space.
You've sat listening to 2 non-experts talk about AI at the start here, Priyanka, and I'm sure we missed a lot. So tell us, what does AI mean to you?
Yes, so when I hear of AI, immediately I think of 2 sides. One is the productivity thing, which everyone, irrespective of whether you're doing research, science research or not, you can use it because it can make writing that annoying email simpler, or it could make your to-do list more organized, things like that. But then for our scientists, AI is a very powerful tool because, like you talked about machine learning, we have lots of machine learning algorithms already code already built into our, science. And this could be figuring out if a cell is cancerous or not, just looking at that image, or it could be making sure that those DNA pieces that we are putting together like puzzles, we're doing it really well. Because all of those are human processes, but AI can help us with that. So it just makes our researchers that much more productive as well, but in the science side of things.
Tell our viewers now, our listeners and our watchers about what your role is within that wider AI story on campus. What is it that you do?
So I think I look after 3 aspects of it. First, it's the community, I manage the AI community where all of these people who are practicing AI on campus come together. And we also interact with the broader AI world. Second thing I do is I help with new talent development. AI is a very fast moving field, and we just don't have enough people with the skills to actually do research in it. So through our internship and mentorship programs, we help build new talent, especially among the groups that are not generally very well represented in the AI sector. So we want to see more diversity of thought in this area. And the final piece of work I do is around responsible AI, thinking about where do we want to take AI in the biology sphere, meaning we want to make sure we are human-centric. We're always putting, if we're thinking about health research, we're always putting the patient first and what's in their best interest. If we're doing conservation research, we always want to make sure we're doing more good and less damage. So it's thinking about the more responsible side of AI.
You've mentioned a couple of those ethical responsibility challenges there. Give us a sense of some of the technical challenges too. What are the big things that AI are helping you and people like you on campus to solve within bioscience?
I think we've got some really good applications that we've seen in the cancer area. So, just starting with figuring out those rare cancers, identifying those cells, but also understanding how the cancer affects the body. So we've seen some really cool examples there. Then we've seen examples, as I was saying, one of our programs here on campus, its entire goal is to put the pieces of all the different genomes on the planet together. So if you guys did the largest one, for example, they did the largest one. And so yeah, it's putting that, if a human did it, it would take years. We use machines, but imagine machines without machine, like AI and machine learning, it would take months. But with AI and machine learning, it can be done in a few days. So that's the level of help it's providing our scientists. But we're also seeing some really cool application with synthetic biology, which will help us find new drugs and new molecules that we can then put into like vaccines and things like that. So there is some really, really exciting avenues there.
That's a really nice big picture there. And yes, just for anyone who hasn't seen the previous episode, you mentioned one of the big biodiversity projects there. So on our campus, that's called the Darwin Tree of Life. The wider global one is the Earth Biogenome Project. I'm sure we can put a couple of links below the video for people to find more about that. You've given us the big picture now, Priyanka, but you mentioned part of your role is about developing new talent and supporting the community. Tell us some more about that. And in particular, I want to hear about these hackathons. What is it that you do to support people on campus?
So hackathons, according to me, is the coolest space to be in. You've got a question, a really niggling question that you want to answer. So for us, it was, how can we use AI to make the lives of our software developers, our researchers, much, more productive, more efficient? And then we had 30 of these really brilliant people, scientists from campus, come together, and they came up with different questions. And you'll hear from Antonio and Eric what they did, but I'll highlight a couple others. So one of them was looking at, we read a lot of scientific literature, but one of our programs actually doesn't just read the literature, they use it to annotate a database with it. It's called the Cosmic Database. And then for them, using AI, they manually do it. They can identify which are the papers that have the most likely chance of finding the right information. And then their people can actually read through it. That can save them 60-70% of the time, because AI might not be perfect. And this is something I want to make it very clear. AI is not perfect. It will not give you the right answer all the time. With every statistical method, and that's what AI is, it's a statistical method, there is a degree of error involved. So even though if it doesn't give us the perfect answer, most of the time it gets us close enough, which means they will save so much time. And so they came together, they came up with not just their own team, but other teams across campus. They came up with the idea, they came up with a prototype, and now they can take it into their team and actually expand on it. And it helps science.
That's awesome. I loved that example. We're going to introduce the first of those two hackathon brilliant people, as you described them, in just a moment. But I wanted to loiter on that example that you gave, Priyanka, because I think that gives people an insight, not just into the big questions that AI is helping us to answer, but some of the small human tasks too. So you mentioned this team, Cosmic. So we have a previous Genomics Lite about Cosmic, but for those of you who haven't seen that, that's the cancer of somatic, the catalogue of somatic mutations in cancer. So this is some people trying to find some of the things that are causing these cancers, and they're bringing lots of data sets together, aren't they? So you said that, the AI there is helping them to find the right papers. You could imagine the task. There's all of these papers published all around the world that are relevant to this topic. If you were to try and read all of them, it's going to take you a really long time. And what you're saying is instead they've used AI to help them filter through that to find the right ones. Yeah, yes. Great. And so in your hackathons, you had a number of different questions like that.
Yeah.
And Sam, I think we're ready to bring in someone who's who's done a different question. So who have we got up next, Sam?
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, thank you, Priyanka. That was really good and really nice to clarify some of the bits that I mentioned very loosely in the introduction. So thank you for that. So yes, I would like to introduce Antonio to our conversation on AI. Antonio, you are a senior bioinformatician for the GSU. That acronym stands for the Genomic Surveillance Unit. Tell us, just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do as part of a bioinformatician in the GSU, and then we'll delve into your hackathon and what you were trying to solve what question you were trying to solve.
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation to be here. It's really nice to be able to talk about that. And okay, my job now, I think I can summarize as building a bioinformatics pipeline so we can process genomic data at scale on the GSU. The genomics, we are more interested into doing genomic surveillance, and this entails being able to process a lot of samples whenever it's required. So this is one of the things that we worry about. Like we don't just care about having a pipeline, processing pipeline that works, but it needs to work, but it needs to work at scale as well. So right now, this is I think it's fair to say 90% of my responsibilities on GSU, building those pipelines.
And you've used this word pipeline. Just briefly, if you can, just a little bit explain to those to me, when someone says pipeline, I'm thinking of my plumbing, tell me what
Not that different.
Okay, explain that to us.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of definitions you can find on the internet, but I think the most intuitive one is that imagine that you have a bunch of little tests that need to be done in sequence, and there is some logic sometimes you need to apply to them, and you need to do that all the time. So then you can organize those tasks to be done in a way that you want it, and automate that. So then I think this in some sense is the looseless definition that and so anything can be a pipeline, right? If you're like cooking something, for instance, I don't know, go to the shop, get your groceries, all of that. There's a bunch of steps that needs to be done. So this is a pipeline, and of course, pipelines can be automated. And in our case, we handle data, so we need to grab the data that come out of the equipment, do a lot of quality checks on the data, do the science that we need to do, and at the end we need to have the information that we need so people can make decisions and produce knowledge. And that's the ultimate goal, I would say. So all of that needs to be automated, because if it has to be done by PhD students, we would run out of PhD students before 50, 100, 1,000 samples like in the month.
So you mentioned there that you're getting the data. So that's the data from sort of sequencing machines on samples. Is that correct? And then you're sort of managing that system, that data downstream to then be, used and made decisions upon.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes. It depends on the project. Sometimes we don't need to get directly from the machines, so there's some variation. But in general, we get stuff that come out of the machine and do the processing that needs to be done to get the data ready for scientists or public health institutions to make decisions based on that.
Amazing. Okay, now the hackathon. So this is slightly of you, when we've spoken before, you say a hobbyist interest of yours. So what were you going into this hackathon trying to solve? And maybe to our audience, maybe to try and also just explain maybe a little bit about what prior knowledge of, say, AI were you coming into this hackathon with?
Sure thing. Well, yes, I am one of the children of Priyanka's hackathon. Because I mean, I had some experience with some degree of machine learning, I would say, back on my PhD, especially, but it was mostly related. And most of the applications that you're going to see of people in science use, at least the average person, is to classify stuff or maybe group stuff, essentially. And there are different ways to do that, of course. And that was my previous background on science. But then on this particular topic, I would say. And of course, deep learning and do amazing stuff and all of that. But after, ChatGPT becomes a thing, I had heard about NLP, of course, natural language processing, and that's what ChatGPT comes from. For us, especially for a person like me that's not an expert on AI, it taps more a bit into this sci-fi level. Like you test something, it looks like someone is talking to you. And then I really got interested in that, mostly as a hobbyist. And I have worked a bit on my spare time, but never became a thing that I could apply directly on um, my work. And then one of the things that the hackathon open, I was lucky to be allowed to take part of. And one of the things that we could do with the LLMs nowadays is to try to set up agents that can do stuff for you. So you set a role, the LLM, you now are a software developer, you are a QA tester. And the idea that I tried to do on this hackathon is to set up a set of LLM agents that could do software developer for me because I'm very lazy. So if I could just, hey, I need a script that does that. I don't want to, write a script, just write it for me. And depending on what you want, just like throwing this ChatGPT, for instance, works just fine. But as the bigger the project gets, have a lot of steps that needs to be done. Like you have a first script, you need to, improve performance on some degree. You could automate that in the sense of you have an agent that plan how the script or the software that you want to build should do, one that actually write the software, the other one that who like gives a review and points to places where it could be, and then you go on this loop until you got something. And of course, I mean, this sounds amazing. Imagine that every scientist, regardless of their experience in programming, they could just have a whole team of software developers for them, but we're not there yet. From my experience, it's hit and miss sometimes. And if you want something simple, that's what I try to build there. Just like set up two agents, LLMs, to build a script for me that do something simple that I could do, to be honest, in probably half an hour. Wouldn't take that long for me with my soft brain and my soft eyes and my soft fingers typing everything. But the LLM do almost the same thing, but a bit better because I asked to like take into account the scalability of the thing. It took like 2 minutes. So this
So you've
like really speed up.
so you've gone from something that's 30 minutes to potentially 2 minutes with a help of a sort of an artificial team essentially
Yes,
behind
exactly.
you. Yeah.
And it's quite interesting to see because like when you do that, you see they communicating to each other.
Mhm.
And on the iteration, because I had to like try different prompts and all, different models. At some point, one gets a bit upset about the other because it requests commentaries on the code, and then the other one don't edit, and then okay, I'll just put it myself, and then put the comments on the code. It's quite interesting, which gives something that removes a bit, and especially for us that are not experts, sometimes this can be a bit magical. But those LLMs, they are essentially word calculators. I heard this somewhere, someone framing like this. And to me, it makes a lot of sense because these things are creating stories based on text that we're seeing. It's just like guessing the next token. And this was essentially what I saw. Like it wrote a story of a software developer planning something, the other one, and this whole thing. And of course, it's amazing what we can do. But I know that there are some people trying to push this idea that, AI, we're gonna take all the jobs of everyone. I mean, it could happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Talk to me like in 10, 20 years again. But at least right now at the current stage that we are, I'm not convinced that, this kind of models that we have can do everything.
But it's
So
a tool there that feels that you could embed in something that supports you as a
yes, as
bioinformatician in the work that you.
exactly. And right now, most of the applications that I had the opportunity to work with, was more into productivity. But just for the audience to be aware, there are people working on more biological applications for that. Like I know there are some groups that are trying to develop like the ChatGPT for genomics. Like instead of training the LLM on like data from human text, you get a lot of genomes and train that because in principle genomes also has some sort of language. So if you could encode that. So there are cool stuff being tried to do, but so far, at least, I think we are in the early days, and be a bit skeptical about all of this end of the world that LLM is going to destroy everything talk. But it's a cool tool.
Great. Well, thank you for that positive message, Antonio. I'm sure people will be glad to take that away with them on this.
When the machine comes.
I want to bring in our third guest now, who's been waiting very patiently. Eric, thank you so much for joining us too. And like Antonio, you came along to Priyanka's hackathon. You had a different question that you were looking to answer. We're going to get to that in a moment, but before we do, just introduce the work that you do on the campus.
Yeah, so I'm a software developer, actually working multiple teams. Before joining the current team, I was in GSU, the same team as Antonio, doing malaria-related web application development. And now I'm focusing in a program called Human Genetics, and we're trying to create an environment, a centralized management environment that installs scientific software for all the scientists, researchers in the campus. So think about installing software. The first impression might be you're going to your website, you click on a link, and you just something magical happen, and then you can run the program. But things in scientific software, it's slightly more complicated because people's needs in different type of research projects are very diverse. So you have 1,000 people doing 1,000 different projects, which means you don't have a centralized program that can does just everything. So to make the life of our scientists and researchers easier by not actually trying to get into the details of installing those software, we provide this centralized platform to do that for them. So they could focus more, people like Antonio could focus more on actually doing the science, writing their pipelines, making things work for the biological side of things, while we're taking care of all the build issues or the bugs to fix to get that software installed in the environment. So that's basically a summary.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Eric. And that's going to lead us really nicely into your project, of course. Just before we go, because we've heard this this acronym a couple of times, GSU, Genomic Surveillance Unit. It sounds quite scary, I sometimes think, but we're not talking about keeping tabs on people here. What you're surveilling is pathogens, is diseases, isn't it? Malaria was one that you just mentioned, Eric. And I know that there's some others that people could look up. Again, we've got a few Genomics Lites on the Genomic Surveillance Unit, so do go back and look at those. There's some really fantastic science going on there, and looking to provide governments with tools to save lots of lives. But that means that it's really important that these scientists have the right software installed, doesn't it, Eric? So tell us about your hackathon. What was it that you were trying to use AI to solve?
Right. So AI to me is really about I started the interest as a hobbyist as well. So as Antonio described himself. So I think for me, the biggest kind of intention for me to get into this is for a productivity boost. So I can see a lot of tasks in software development. I'm sure it also applies to a lot of office desk based tasks that people do. We think this is something that feels quite mundane, and I want something to automate it. But on the other hand, to write something to actually automated takes a bit of a special kit of skills. It's either writing some script in a programming language that does the job, or it's actually writing the script might take longer time than, oh, I just get over it and do it myself. So we kind of in this dilemma of it's not, either way, it's not really saving time and improve our productivity. However, when AI comes in, when it marries with programming, you can actually get language, a natural language prompt into a model that generates a script to do whatever you want for you. For me, it is like maybe a really big chance for solving the dilemma of the productivity. So I think with this task in mind, I came into this hackathon with a library that I found that can actually integrate the language model, which can either be ChatGPT or even a language model you download for free on your computer. Integrate that with the common productivity tools we have in campus. For instance, we use Slack to message each other. We use emails. We use some project management tools online. So if this library can put together the Slack chatbot together powered by that LLM in the one place, and then people can simply just create applications without any prior knowledge of the programmings or large language model whatsoever. So it means we can generate a very large family of applications were customized to whatever the people's needs are. So that's an idea I'm really interested in, and I'm trying to get something to work. So in the 2 days of the hackathon, we actually managed to generate a Slack chatbot using that package. And yeah, one of our scientific writer in the Wellcome Connecting Science actually interact with that chatbot and had some really deep conversations. So it was a good demo of how someone without any knowledge of programming could actually get something to connect to their productivity tools, and therefore boost their productivity, and also share that tools around in campus with their colleagues.
Great, thank you, Eric. So what we've got there, it sounds like, is a great. We've got 3 different examples of the use of AI in different ways, increasing efficiency, speeding up processes, whether that's doing the research for the Cosmic database, whether that's writing the scripts that Antonio mentioned for within GSU, or Eric, for you, what sounds like a more person-to-person thing of making sure that scientists have the software that they need for the particular research that they're doing. Priyanka, I want to come back to you. All 3 of these examples do have the potential to replace a human being, don't they, in terms of they're taking out someone's job. How do you respond to that? I think everyone so far has talked about increasing productivity. What do you see that meaning for the future of AI in the workplace?
No, I'm with Antonio. I don't fear my job or anyone's job going. In fact, I think our jobs are going to become more interesting because AI is going to take the mundane out. Like I mentioned, there is an error associated with AI, so we can't just let it loose in the world. We need human in the loop to make sure the quality is maintained. So we will always need humans. What is going to happen is AI might do all the boring emails for you, and you might only do the thinking part, and you might like write short notes and then it will craft really pretty emails for you. You might write your to-do list and it might organize it in your calendar for you as to like when you can do that. I think there are some apps that are already doing some of that stuff. Or from the research standpoint, research is a lot of it is thinking before you even do. So we do need the humans to do the thinking. So I'm again not worried people losing their jobs. But what is going to happen is it might take some of the boring data cleaning job that Antonio has, and then he can focus on more of the edge cases, the more exciting pieces, or he might focus on the big picture and the scaling that he talked about. So I think our jobs are going to become more interesting if we deploy AI the right way, rather than it taking any of our jobs away.
That's yeah, thank you. Yeah, Antonio, I see that you're put your hand up. Do you want to comment back on that?
Just a little comment about that. I totally agree with Priyanka. I think that that's probably the path that we're going. There are one aspect that makes me a bit worried. I mean, just don't say that, oh, everything's positive. It's that I think it can decrease the demand for people who just can write code, right? In the sense, because if the LLM can do that, why would I hire someone? So people who should be in our particular area, if the only thing that they can do is writing code, yes, then maybe they need to adapt themselves to do something more than just that. There is one aspect that also worries me a bit in this particular change, is how, because like I'm able to use that tool because I have some experience in coding and I can do my job essentially. So I know when it's wrong, I know what to request, and I know when to evaluate if the answer is good or not. But for people who are just starting, like I have to interact with code of PhD students that are start their PhD right now, and they essentially just do ChatGPT because it's faster. And like they don't have notions of the basic stuff, I would say, and the code that the LLM produce with their prompts, it's not that good. So I think there is some challenge that we need to handle that, especially for people who are getting to the area, how this would affect it. But definitely it's not the end of the world for now. And yeah, like it. The other aspect that I would, just to finish this, is that there are people, the people who hire, like I think they need to be educated about what this kind of tools actually can do, because I already heard people, especially from business sides, not at Sanger, please, not around here, but like in other areas, that we don't need to hire software engineers anymore because we have LLMs that can do that, AI, which is usually people who say that is people who had no idea how this area works. So they just believe the hype, I would say, and this can create problems in the for companies and also in like the job demand. I think the social aspect is more problematic than the actual technological aspect.
And I'm just conscious that, thank you, Antonio, for coming out. I'm really conscious of the time. 45 minutes has absolutely flown by. I just want to maybe just sort of spend the last couple of minutes that we have. And I know that Priyanka, you've sort of mentioned that. Antonio, you've kind of mentioned it as well. We've looked a little bit future focusing, and I want to sort of look again, shift us into the future focusing aspect. I guess for you, Eric, and Antonio, the hackathon that Priyanka put on was kind of there to help you to explore that hobbyist interest. And you've said, hobbyist, but has that now started to embed into the work that you are doing? Has it allowed you to now sort of explore adding these tools into the actual day-to-day, or is it still at the moment for you sort of you need the time sort of away to sort of have a play to then be able to implement? Where is it at for you? Are you starting to get it into the day-to-day bits of your working? Eric, if I just go to you to quickly answer that for us at the start.
Yeah, so quick answer is yes. I think what ChatGPT provides at the moment is everyone basically with access to internet and computer, they could tell the language model what to do, basic, very simple or stupid tasks. ChatGPT can do them fairly well because those do not really require a very deep logical thinkings, maybe just editing some text and stuff. And that by itself is already providing a productivity boost, at least in my experience. But on the other hand, the kind of things I'm exploring during the hackathon, that application would require a more capable AI model to power it. So basically, you have some less than clear instructions to the AI to do some fairly complicated tasks, including some pipelines. I don't think the capability of AI is that yet, but I'm looking forward to the technology advanced in the future.
Great, thank you, Eric. And I'm afraid we're going to have to finish it there. We're out of time, but clearly what this tells me is we need another Genomics Lite on AI. Thank you so much to our three guests, Priyanka, Antonio, and Eric. Thank you to you for joining us as well. And we have one more in this Genomic Lights summer series. So do join us next week. We're going to be back on YouTube live stream at 12 o'clock UK time on Thursday. And we're going to be talking then about ancient DNA. What is really possible with ancient DNA? So do join us for that one. Thank you very much for joining us this time. Goodbye.